What is the sound of one man listening? This is Man Listening, a fresh podcast featuring the stories of strong women who bounce back. Man Listening, because every woman deserves to be heard.
Hey there, I'm Stuart Watson, and welcome to Man Listening. My mom and dad died 10 years ago this week in the same room on the same day of the same disease, Alzheimer's. And that still blows me away when I say that. Having said that, 20 years ago, I recorded an interview with my mom and with my dad to ask them about their own personal history. And thank God I did, because it preserved my mom's voice and my dad's before they developed dementia, while their memories were still sharp. So you get to hear her talk about World War II, about her brother in the war, about the Great Depression, about her own personal history growing up in this tiny town. It is lovely. Her voice is lovely. It brings her back to life, and I wanted to share it with you. So I'm going to share the raw audio of that interview with you. If ever I wanted to listen to a voice, it is my mom's. You know, one of the first voices I ever knew, and it brings me a lot of comfort, a lot more than reflecting on the dark times then. So this is Nell Martin Watson, recorded 20 years ago, and it's like a voice from the great beyond. I hope you enjoy it.
Depression started when? 22 years after I was born, yeah. Wasn't a way of doing without anything. We all were equal. You know, everybody's pretty much in the same circumstances. Some people who wound up getting very wealthy eventually didn't spend any more money than the rest of us. They plowed it all back in. Some funny stories about that.
Did you have the feeling that your dad that you guys were rich, poor, moderate, or?
We were happy. We were comfortable. Yeah, we had a good time. I saw people poorer than we were from out in the country. Just one chap, just pitiful. We didn't feel rich, but we felt real comfortable. We knew they were in worse shape they were.
You had a car?
Yeah, we had a car, and one car. And then Ben, of course, got a car when he got old enough.
Okay, Ben was her brother.
We had a house and wonderful food and took dancing lessons, music lessons, and so forth. Had to come to Albany at first for all that.
Albany was the big city.
Yeah, went to downtown Albany probably more than Albanians. We had to get things. And came to church down here.
Oh.
And we went in Leesburg when the little Presbyterian church met, which at that time was just about once a month in the afternoon. But we came to the First Presbyterian down here, a Sunday school and church.
So you started coming to First Presbyterian?
When I was 4.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Same church?
Yeah, It was a lot bigger then.
That was a little bit of a drive. So your mother was Presbyterian, was your dad?
Yeah, he was too. Mm-hmm.
They were both Presbyterian?
Yeah. And Uncle Waya was, if you don't have time for this,
no, go ahead.
Uncle Waya was elder in the little Presbyterian church in Leesburg. And Rye gave me all the minutes of the session meetings they had. And one of them said that a session meeting was held en route to Presbytery in Cuthbert. This was in the car. It said present were Mr. So-and-so, the minister, and the elder, Waya G. Martin. They had one item of business, and then somebody prayed, and I guess the driver kept his eyes open. And that was the end of the session meeting.
That's the minutes.
Yeah, that was one meeting.
With the car ride.
En route to Cuthbert, yeah. Had to attend a little something before Presbytery.
Now, was it the little church in town where they prayed for...
No, that was in Smithville. My grandparents lived in Smithville and raised their 10 children there. And they had a wonderful time. There were several big families, but Smithville was very small. And so Hugh, one of the 10 children, was very adventurous. And he would, I guess he was about 15, I don't know how he was. He would get on a freight train and disappear, go off somewhere. And so when Granny would go to prayer meeting, the people would say, "Who shall we pray for?" And everybody would say, "Hugh McKinney." And then he'd show up again at home and tell them about his wild adventures. I'm sure it kept my grandparents upset the whole time. But anyway, one time I was telling a girl from England this who lived here in Albany, and she said, "Oh, well, we all have our black sheep." And I said, "We never regarded him as a black sheep. He was colorful and adventurous." We enjoyed him. Granny, I'm sure, didn't, but we enjoyed hearing the tales later.
And they would always consider him, somebody to pray for.
Oh, yeah, you needed to. He was gone and he was young. And we thought about him as a Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn. He told some tale when he got home. He didn't have enough to eat, and so, this is so crazy. He stopped at a house and started eating grass in the yard, and the lady said, "What in the world's the matter with you?" And he said, "I'm just so hungry." And she said, "Come in." So she fed him all manner of good food.
You knew how to manipulate.
Yeah, right, yeah. Knew how to operate.
So where did you graduate from high school?
Leesburg. There were 10 of us.
Wow.
And
are any of those folks still around?
One's here now. They probably are. Yeah. A lot of them, I don't know where. One's in Orlando. And a few around Albany, probably.
And you would have graduated what year?
44. The war was going on.
Wow. Now, Ben went off. Did you guys hear from Ben?
In the war, you mean?
Yeah. Did he write?
Yeah. He went to Emory, and then he went to the Navy. Yeah, he was real good about writing.
Was he in dental school then, or was he in undergrad?
He was in dental school, I think. I'd have to sort of stop and figure, but I think so.
Yeah. So he took
No. Ben was a dentist in the Seabees. He was through. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And he was that chaplain, too.
So your mom must have been worried about him.
Oh, yeah. Real worried, yeah. But he was good about writing, and he was in the South Pacific. And then, of course, he was in New Zealand and met Mary and married her.
How did you keep track of what was going on with him in the war and that sort of thing?
They had a code like Stuart's folks did. They all knew by some code where they were because they couldn't tell and they couldn't say much. But we knew that he was in the South Pacific.
My dad put a code in his letters home to tell his parents where he was stationed.
How did they keep track of what was going on with the war in the South Pacific?
The newspaper and the radio kept track. President Roosevelt would come on and talk and so forth. And yeah, they kept track.
Well, there's certain hours of the day, just like the TV, that you would know to go and listen to the news report.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. The hours of the news, the late afternoon, and in the evening, too.
Did people gather at the radio to listen to it, just like
the families? Yeah. I mean, you didn't see them sit huddled over the radio like you do in pictures. But, yeah, you sat around the living room and listened to the news. And Daddy adored Jeanette MacDonald. And let's see, who was a male? Let's see. Eddie somebody, I think. And so we would come down to Albany and see movies with them. And Daddy loved to hear them sing. And then we'd hear them when they were on the radio and hear the Lum and Abner and things like that.
Dad's baby book said that he watched Tom Mix. Do you remember some of the movies that you saw when you were a little girl when you'd come to Albany?
Yeah. I remember a train movie that was so scared I had bad dreams all night. Robbers got on a train, but the theater looked glamorous to me. It was pretty. And so after the movie, when you'd seen all those beautiful people on the screen, I was a little girl, maybe junior high or something. You'd go upstairs to the bathroom, and then coming down those wide, beautiful steps, you'd feel terribly glamorous, and you'd walk differently from the way you had when you arrived at the movie.
Was this the Albany Theater?
Yeah, Albany Theater.
Wow.
It was good looking.
Yeah,
then.
I remember that thing. It was like a broad entranceway.
Yeah, and a real wide, good looking steps upstairs.
So you graduated from Leesburg,
mm-hmm.
and then How'd you decide where to go to college? Where did you go?
I was going to Agnes Scott because we were Presbyterian and had always planned that. But Daddy's territory was cut at that time with Gallion. And so I went to Wesleyan. It was a little bit less. I think Scott cost a little over $1,200 and Wesleyan cost $930. So I never regretted that. I just went there 2 years and then to the University of Georgia.
Were you disappointed you couldn't go to the other school right away?
Not terribly. You just took what came along back then. Things that upset people now didn't seem to upset us.
Weren't disappointed at all?
Not very much. I doubt if I'd ever been on the Scott campus. I didn't know that much about it.
Yeah. Did you have fun in school?
Oh, yeah. I really did. It was all fun.
Did your father ever write you and say you're having too much fun? Or?
No, I sort of got straightened out before that point. When I got, a few grades, I realized that this wasn't going to work. So I worked hard. I made good grades. Yeah. Enough to satisfy Daddy, the dean's list.
So what was fun? What kind of things did you guys do at school?
Oh, we went downtown in Macon to movies, and we had dances, and the war was going on, and sometimes some soldier that I had been dating would come to see us, and we went horseback riding when he did, and I wasn't any good at that. So we just, different parties at school. And then after 2 years, I transferred to Georgia, and several of my best friends went with me.
When you hurt your leg, was that a surgery or did you break your leg?
I didn't hurt it. I was 14 and I was on the stage in the school in Leesburg, and Mother saw my legs didn't look right and took me to an orthopedic surgeon in Atlanta, and he operated and cut the big bone in two and then twisted the leg right and set it, and then a few weeks later did the other one.
Did you have to walk with crutches at all?
Yeah, I was in a wheelchair at first when I stayed at Piedmont a long time, and Mama stayed with me at a boarding house across the street. She stayed. When I went home, this ambulance from Kimball Stern came to get me. And Daddy knew a hill between, this is all trivia, but it was fun at the time. Daddy knew a hill between Atlanta and Albany where you would stop at what seemed like the bottom of the hill, and the car would roll up the hill. And so, backwards and disillusion. And so he told Buck Stern, whom we all knew well, the ambulance driver who owned the place later, showed him the hill. And every time for the next 50 years that I saw Buck, he would say, "Oh, let me tell you about your daddy showing me that hill." But anyway, when we got to Leesburg, they drove by the school in the ambulance and turned the siren on real low so all the kids would know I was home. And so my class came right away to my house, and they'd been working at school and had would put their hands on the sheets of the bed, and when they left, Mother had to change the linen. And then our Lorene would take me in the wheelchair to school, which was a half block away, and I would go to class.
Wow.
And then I guess I was on crutches. I was on crutches. They were terrible.
How did you come to go from Wesleyan? I guess Wesleyan's in Macon, and Agnes Scott was that suburban Atlanta?
Yeah, Decatur. We thought it'd be an awful lot of fun to go to the University of Georgia, my friends and I. And I knew that probably Daddy would like for me to get a business administration degree. And so I told him I couldn't get it at Wesleyan, but could at Georgia, and he let me go.
Did you have fun at Georgia?
Yeah, lots of fun. See, I went to Wesleyan 2 years, and then Georgia the last 2 years.
Where did I get Agnes Scott?
Well, I was going there till Daddy had some financial reverses, and so then I didn't. And I had to make up quite a lot when I got to Georgia, because Wesleyan's courses were a little more impractical, and I had to take Western Civ and some other course by correspondence, and then everything else. I hadn't had anything very useful like biology and so forth I caught all that up at Georgia.
Since it was during the war, was it mostly women at school?
No, the veterans were back. See, this was in 46, and they were very good students. They knew they had to finish and get out and work because they were behind in age. And so they made the curve sort of go up. So you had to study it a little bit.
And when you graduated from college, did you move back home? Or?
Yeah, I moved. I just was going home for the summer and then joined my friends in Atlanta and get a job. And I met your father. And I never got to Atlanta.
How did you meet him? Where did you see him?
At a rehearsal party. And very, very briefly we met. And then I got a job that summer.
Do you have any particular first impression?
I hardly remember. It was a lot of people, and we met very briefly. And so, but the next hour.
Didn't make any last.
Very vague. I guess he was wearing a tuxedo and looked good. But anyway, I got a summer job, and I drove down here. I got a ride to Albany, and then I'd go to Lane Drugstore, and some of the people that worked in the office at Clark Thread where I worked would pick me up and take me out there. And so the next morning after the rehearsal, I saw your dad there in Lane's, and so we sat together, and then we started dating. And at first we dated about 6 nights a week because I had to wash my hair on the 7th night. And then we got so serious, he'd come on the hair washing night, and I'd wash it and dry it by the fireplace in the living room while he was there. After a month, we knew we were going to get married.
How'd you know?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think he ever said, "Will you marry me?" We just knew we were, and we started planning. But we had to wait a long time because Kate was
her sister.
Bob, Kate's husband, was with the occupation force in Germany, and she wasn't going to be coming home a while. So we set it for April, and she still wasn't home, but we just went on and married.
So how long between when you started dating and when you guys got married?
I guess we met in June and married in April.
So it was less than a year?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How long were you engaged?
Well, we'd be engaged about 8 months, I guess. Not with a ring. I forget exactly when I remember the occasion of his buying the ring. I didn't go with him or anything. But he dropped a diamond, which they never found, in the jewelry store. The jeweler was a good friend. I guess he made a more zealous search after Daddy left. But anyway, it was a pretty ring. No, they were friends. It was Mayfair Jewels.
Where would Mayfair's have been?
It wasn't. It was on the north side of Broad then. Later it moved to the south side of Broad.
Yeah, and they're not there anymore.
No, they became Masons. Yeah. Mason's Bottom.
So it wasn't Crow's Drugs, it was...
Lee Drug Company on the corner of Pine and Jackson.
Is that still there?
Your father's shaking his head. That's not right. No, nothing's still there as it was.
You guys would go and have soda or what?
Before work, yeah. And he had been to Waukulla Springs right before I met him. And he'd gotten a terrible infection in his ear. And he just looked sick and pitiful, and that made me even more interested. But he recovered pretty quickly.
That appealed to your caretaker.
Yeah, right.
Needed somebody.
He did.
Now you can barely hear my dad interrupt.
She told me not to butt in, but she's been taking care of me ever since.
He said she's been taking care of me ever since. Sweet.
And so you waited to get married until Kate could make it?
No, well, that's what we were trying to do. But we set it for April, and she still wasn't home, so we married.
And you wanted to get married on April 1st?
Yeah, but I wouldn't hear to that. So we married on the 2nd. And it was in the First Presbyterian Church with 5 attendants. And then the reception was at the Federated Women's Club. And I found yesterday, we found the expenses for all the wedding, and it's just amazing, the change that's come about.
Yeah, hang on a second.
Stu, I can not talk as much because...
That's fine. That's good, I'll hang on to it.
I'm enjoying it.
So what were some of the expenses?
I'd found a notebook with a list of her wedding expenses handwritten.
Let's see, the clothes cost right much. My going away suit cost $50, and gloves, 2 pair of gloves for $5, and my whole trousseau cost $333. No. And then you add in the lingerie. It was $411 for my trousseau. It was pretty. And let's see, that's more clothes. Yeah, it cost more than that. I kept buying. The flowers for the bridesmaids were $85, and the reception flowers were $36. And to rent the women's club where we had it was $15. And now I don't understand this. Yeah, it was all broken up. Catherine Mosley, the cateress, charged $35, but she just must have made 1 or 2 things, because then the other food items listed here. But anyway.
And what's that written in?
It wasn't written for posterity, Stuart. It was written for Mama to note, to tell Daddy what she'd spent. It's written in the farmer's pocket ledger. And as you noticed last night, wait a minute.
Back page.
Yeah. More wedding expenses back here. She comes to a total of $957. I don't know whether the whole thing cost $1,000. Apparently it cost a little bit more than $1,000. But anyway, the page it's recorded on, not for posterity, mind you, is a stock breeding record page. And then some pages are cut out. Daddy apparently kept his own records in it.
So
And see, that's 1949.
Wow. So was it good? And was it a fun wedding? Did you enjoy it, or were you?
Yeah, it wasn't as riotous and everything as now, but yeah, it was fun. The young people were here, and your daddy might have told you this, but the cook or the butler at the ATO house came down, Tom Sessions.
Tom Sessions was the only black man at that wedding.
Ben and Mary gave the rehearsal down at Radium Springs on Friday night.
And so who was your maid of honor?
Ann Wallace from Madison. She was my roommate at school.
She's still around?
Yeah, she is. I should write her.
Yeah. And the best man was Jerry, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's neat. And where was the honeymoon?
It was in Gatlinburg. Now, you won't believe this, whoever sees this. It was beautiful, wonderful little village, and nothing gaudy about it, and beautiful brook running through it, the Pigeon Creek, I think it was, just as pretty. I mean, the buildings were, as they should be. And the whole thing was just a small, beautiful village on a beautiful stream.
None of the high rises?
No, none of that. Just, I guess the highest thing maybe was a hotel that was 2 or 3 stories high. A couple of those. But it was, yeah, just as a mountain town should be.
And then when you came back here, where did you settle? Where was your first?
We had Ann Knight's garage apartment. That's where practically all the newlyweds lived. Lots of people lived there. And so I worked, and since I worked, I hired a little maid, and my daddy thought that was the best money I ever spent. The little maid came, she was little maid, little apartment, and so she came once a week and stayed 4 hours, and she cleaned it so quickly she didn't have much to do, so she'd rearrange the furniture. So we had to go home at night and shove the furniture around a little bit.
Is that apartment still there?
Yeah, I wonder if they rented. I don't know about that.
We'll have to figure out.
But we had a terrific freeze here. I don't know how cold it got, but see, we were a garage apartment, so there wasn't any warmth underneath us. That was the garage, and the water in a flower vase froze. So I told Stuart I just had to leave and go to Leesburg, where they had fireplaces, and we went up there just for a short while.
And didn't he like spend some of your savings on something?
Oh yeah, I had just worked that summer, so I didn't have a huge bank account. But he closed it out, and put it in, hours, and that was my dowry. And then he went and bought himself a Magnavox record player, radio, this nice thing.
Did you have any say?
That was the end of my dowry. I think he felt very expert at choosing this thing, and I didn't have a lot to say. But we went. We needed a rug badly in our little living room, and so Stuart and Mother and I went, and I saw a rug at Callaway Furniture Company that I just loved, and Mother said, "Now look at Stuart." The rug cost $100. And Stuart was looking sick. And so we went to Sears, and I picked a glamour rug with about that thick for $17.
Maybe if it had been a Magnavox.
Yeah, right. Had it been something that played music.
So didn't he say no wife of mine will work?
Yeah, he said that. Mm-hmm.
Until you got married.
Yeah. When did you last quit saying that?
Dad told me he was cut off.
Oh, yeah, right. Stuart was practicing law in Atlanta and making very little money, so his daddy kept up his allowance. And I think Stuart expected this to go on forever. I can't imagine why he did. But anyway, when he married, his dad said, "Well, you must be doing better than I thought, son." So he cut him off.
Go ahead. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Got married.
Well, I worked at Clark Thread Company a few years. Real nice people out there. I liked them all. And then I went to Cudahy.
Cudahy, Cudahy, was a meat packing company.
I made, at Clark Thread, I made $165 a month. And at Cudahy, I made $387 a month. And I told Dad, I was the secretary to the manager, and I told Daddy that was because it was unionized, and I wasn't in a union. The office staff wasn't, but the plant was unionized. And Daddy hated to think it made that much difference with that. But Cudahy went broke. And I had Mr. Ray would dictate the letter every week of explaining to headquarters why they hadn't made money, and a two-pager, and it was right depressing. And then eventually they sold it to Likes Brothers.
So it was it a textile company too?
No, it was meat packers.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And Clark Thread was thread, of course.
Did your dad draw a connection between the unionized and the plant closing down?
Not my dad, but I certainly drew the. Oh yeah, well that's true. I mean, that was it. For one thing, that was a big factor, because those were high wages. And
was it union when Likes took it over?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't know would it necessarily stay union.
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so you were basically the breadwinner.
Yeah, for a while I was. And then
We got children.
Did you hear that? Dad says, "We got chillin'," or "we got children."
Then I worked, I don't know how long I worked at those two places, but not forever. And then I worked, I worked for United Way every season, every
That was long.
fall. No, that was paid.
Really?
There were two paid people. And the office was in the lobby of the Garden. And that was the only work I did for a number of years. My work career was over in 10 years. And when I got old enough to get Social Security, Kyle just thrilled to death, at the thought that I would draw something. And she said, "Ms. Watson, your work record was minimal." I said, "Well, that's easy for you to say." But see, it just got to add up to 10 years full time, I think. And probably 6 or 7 years I was just part-time at United Way.
Yeah. So how long did you have to work to basically?
To help us, just a few years. And then my work career was pretty much over. And I did volunteer work with the league.
Wow.
And
So where did you guys live before you built this house?
We lived in that garage apartment, and then we built a duplex on 8th Street, and the contractor was a fraternity brother of your dad's, and we didn't know much about building, and it didn't, well, it was structurally right, but it didn't have the aesthetics it should have had. We didn't know what this character's going to do next. So we lived there a few years, and then built this house in 57. My daddy died in early 57, and Daddy had always said, when I die, you build a cottage for your mother in your backyard. And so we wanted to build anyway, and we had bought the lot, I think, before. Yeah, we had. And so we just built a house and a suite of rooms for Mother in the house. The cottage thing didn't seem to be practical.
And your dad, I remember one story that I liked particularly was when the minister came around on Sunday visiting.
Yeah. Oh, that was at Mother's, where they, when they were children, like 10 children and 1 bathroom. People didn't have a lot of bathrooms. No, surely not. I think that's right. And so the Presbyterian minister was always, he was from out of town, and he would have the Sunday meal with my grandparents and all these kids. And people would have to hide in the bathroom to read the newspaper because the minister didn't believe in it. That made a great inconvenience.
Well, they believed in reading the funnies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he did.
So Dad was like a young lawyer. He wasn't making that much money. What
Right.
did they do? What did he and Paul do when they first put out a shingle?
Well, they probably went out and visited some people, called on some people, and they did volunteer work. And so, and Mr. Keenan got him some business.
Paul Keenan was my dad's law partner, and he became mayor of Albany, Georgia.
So it was 2 years after your dad died that we came along.
Yeah, right.
And this house was built by the time we came.
Yeah, this house was built in 57. We moved in October of 57. Yeah. And then you were born in 59.
I want to jump back on something that John Inman said last night, which was really interesting. When you first came to Albany, was Slappy Drive paved off?
Dr. John Inman had told me the night before that Albany, Georgia's main road was not paved. It was a dirt road when he came to town.
Well, no, I think it just gradually, and then good things happened, and it did okay. And he worked hard, long hours, early in the morning till about 7 at night some nights.
And how did we come along, me and Liz?
Oh, y'all came along through heaven. We went to the adoption agency then was the Dougherty County Welfare Department. And this lovely Miss Hillsman was the director of it. That's Ann Knight's mother. Just one of the nicest people in the world. Attractive and intelligent, and she had everything. So they have to go through this process where they come to your home and visit you. And they have you together and visit you, and then they come, went to see Stuart at his office, and then came to see me here, and on and on and on to be sure you're fit for parenting. And so Ben had already adopted his children, and Ben said, "Now, Ward, I want to tell you something." Said they are big on potty training, so give that some thought. So I don't know whether Ms. Hillsman mentioned it or not, but I was ready. So then after 2 years of the process and waiting, they called and said, "You have a son." So we were supposed to keep it secret, but of course I had been gathering clothes, and I ran down to Palmyra drugstore and bought a lot of baby things, and the secret was out. And so some people knew, that we were going to get you. So we got you, and you were adorable, and you spit up on your daddy's shoulder immediately. Oh, and we took a little baby dress to bring you home in, and we had to dash out and buy a little romper outfit. You wouldn't fit into that baby dress. And so then we came home, and Mama was living here.
Where did you pick me up physically? Where?
In Macon, Yeah.
Would it have been at an office?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was, and the welfare department's place, and they. So you see the baby, and then you go sleep on it, and then you go back and get the baby the next morning.
Wow.
And so we did, and then we called Mama, and she passed the word to Ben that we were on the way home. And when we got here, Mother called Ben and Mary right away, and they came down, and we had the best time, and you were adorable. And so I walked out of the room to go to the kitchen, and when I got back in, my baby's clothes had been changed. And I said, "Who changed my baby?" And Mama said, "I did. I thought he was dressed a little too warm. He wasn't dressed warm enough." And Ben could tell I didn't like it, and Ben said, "Mama, come on out here." And he said, "Mama, this is Nell's baby." So anyway, Mama was pretty good about that.
Yeah. So was it okay living with her? What was it like when she lived here?
It was all right. Yeah. Daddy was so sweet and good about it. He was really good. And she lived here 9 years. And sold her house in Leesburg, of course. And so it was all right.
What was the difference in temperament between me and Liz? What was I like as a little kid and what was Liz like?
Oh, you were quieter and smiling all the time, just real relaxed. And Sis, of course, was smiling too, but she was watching to see what's going to happen next and see if it was all okay. But you were just maybe a little more relaxed. And Liz got quite relaxed enough, but she was, speedy, and you and I not speedy.
In the home movies, you see some of the maids come through.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Caretakers. What did they do most of the time? What kinds of...
I am personally interested in the black women she calls maids who really did everything from cooking and cleaning to child care.
I did, all the people my age worked on league work and all sorts of volunteer work. And then it was such a funny process. We worked to go through the process. You have to go to get in the junior league. And that took untold hours. You have a course, and I was the education chairman for that course. And the whole thing is pretty ludicrous. And then the ladies come down from New York to visit, and we wined them and dined them. And so we were busy doing that sort of thing. And then the maids would be with you when we were away, but we went home plenty of hours. We got home at lunch and probably stayed.
So what kinds of things did they do?
You played out in the backyard a lot, and the other maids would bring the kids they were nursing. And it was fun. You'd have the neighborhood kids and the maids.
Quite a circuit.
Mm-hmm.
Does any one of them stand out? We mentioned...
Louise was great, yeah. And she was Rosie Greer's cousin.
Rosie Greer was an NFL star.
But Louise was thin as a rail, and Rosie's huge. And she was very intelligent, and she quit eventually and took a nursing course. And then she and her son, Tony, moved to Washington, D.C., where Tony, when he grew up, became a policeman. Louise, I don't know for sure where she is now. I could find out from Leola, that works for Cornelia.
Leola basically raised my best friend.
So Leola and her.
Yeah, they were close friends, kept in touch. But Louise was wonderful. Yeah. And then we took several nurses to the beach when we'd go. And Liz knocked Mary Worthy's glasses off accidentally into the Gulf of Mexico. So we had to do something about that. But we'd have a house, a cottage, and the carport, and then the maid's room. And some of them were homesick, and some of them adored it. Mary Worthy liked it. But it was a big help.
Yeah. Okay. Right out of the tape. What have I missed?
Nothing, I think.
Oh, I did want to ask you, do you know how Ben met Mary, and how did you guys meet Mary, and where did they get?
My Uncle Ben married my Aunt Mary in the Pacific in New Zealand during World War II.
I think Ben had a letter of introduction from somebody that knew them, And he went to that home, and Ms. Winston was crazy bad. Oh, I think when Ben first got there, a button had come off of his pants or something, and he had to draw Ms. Winston into another room and ask if she'd repair it. And she liked him so much, and of course Mary did. And so they had a fast courtship, and then came home on the ship. Well, no, she went to some island and met Ben, and then they came home on the ship together. And Ben's buddies, to play a joke on him, took his door off the hinges.
Where did they get married?
In New Zealand, in Auckland.
Wow.
And when we went to New Zealand, the first thing the tour director did was take us up to the bay. I forget there's a beautiful harbor there and pretty homes on the harbor. And he took us up to see it, and that's where Mary had lived. Her house was up there. Real pretty view.
Wow.
And so they were stationed, I shouldn't go on, but they were stationed in that place on the coast of South Carolina, Paris Island. And there was a quaint old town there, real old. And the transportation from Paris Island to get closer to Albany was from Paris Island, you went to Savannah on a little train that didn't have any windows. Just, it was open. And so the cinders would blow back. I can hardly believe that in that time, but that's true.
So you guys didn't get to go to the wedding? Nobody?
Mm-mm. No. Mm-mm.
So the first time they met Mary, they were already married?
Yeah, right. They came home, I guess it was 45, maybe. Mm-hmm. Or 40, late 44.
Now, I have another interview that I recorded that same weekend in which we drive up to tiny Leesburg, Georgia. It's a lot bigger now than it was then. And we drive around town and we go past her old home, her old church, and also out to a family cemetery, a very small family cemetery. And so there's some things that I know about my own personal history, my lineage, especially on the Martin and the McKinney side of the family, my mother's side, that I never would have known if I didn't drive around with her. I've since made a business, which I can tell you more about in the future, out of talking to people to get this kind of personal history from them. And I can tell you about that. I'd be happy to tell you about that in the future. In the meantime, such a pleasure to share my mom's voice with you. Thank you for listening.
Man Listening is a production of Unmediated LLC in cooperation with the Queen City Podcast Network and Balto Creative Media. Allison Andrews at Andrews Creative and Rachel Clapp Miller are developmental producers. Sally Higgins at Higgins & Owens tries to keep us legal. Our music is A Day at the Park by the group Pictures of the Floating World. Your announcer is Catherine Smith. That's me. Please go to our Patreon page. You'll find us at patreon.com. Look for Man Listening, one word, no spaces. We hope you'll join us by becoming a member. A small investment can raise up the conversation. If you want exclusive member merch like a t-shirt, we can arrange that too.
A huge thank you and shout out to everyone who has supported Man Listening, however you've supported it, even if it's just by listening from the very beginning. Tell a friend. I appreciate it.
Don't forget to support us at Patreon. We believe one voice can change the conversation. Thanks.